Hey, what's up everybody? This is Nick's video. This is your first episode of Skooled. What I want to do is get people in this country more intellectual, get them talking about more than just football and the Kardashians. And today, I want to talk about African history. I chose African history because there's a lot of history. It's not really taught much. When I was a kid, there was a section for Chinese history, Roman history, Greek history. It really wasn't much about African history. First of all, I want to start with the Nubian Empire. It was a great ancient empire just south of the second cataract of the Nile River. They had their own pantheon of God, and they had more pyramids than Egypt. These pyramids weren't as big as the pyramids of Giza, no, but they were still huge pyramids. And these blocks were giant. These men had to move them across the Sahara Desert. So there's more pyramids than there are in Egypt. And in fact, when Egypt was weakened by war with people in the Levant, the Nubians struck north and conquered Egypt and ruled it for 200 years. For 200 years, all the pharaohs were Nubian. In fact, the Egyptians wrote about the athleticism of the Nubians. So they would pay them to be mercenaries in their army because they were so impressed by their superior athleticism. Some Egyptian cities had all black police forces, as they wrote it. And these police were called magi, and they had not only attack dogs, but trained male baboons. So you had all black police forces in a lot of ancient Egypt cities with trained attack dogs and trained male baboons, which is personally just really cool to me. And then there was the kingdom of Kush, just a little bit farther south in the kingdom of Nubia. They were renowned as the greatest metal workers in all of ancient time. These people built the largest monoliths that stand today. Some of them, I believe, are about 70 feet tall. And we know about the monoliths in Europe, but these are even bigger, and they've got inscriptions carved into the side of them, which is pretty cool. You know, not many people know about it. I want to bring awareness to all this. And my favorite period in African history would have to be the Mali Empire. This empire was consolidated by a man called Sundiata Keita. Now this guy was born with some kind of physical impairment. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it hindered him in life. Well, he was kidnapped by his father's enemies. He eventually escaped his captor. Apparently, he exercised so much that whatever crippled him, it didn't even bother him anymore. It didn't affect him anymore. And he became a warrior king known as the Lion King. And he consolidated all the warring tribes and small kingdoms into the Mali Empire, all into one empire. And his descendant, Mansa Musa, is argued to be the richest man that ever lived. He was so rich that after converting to Islam, he made a pilgrimage to Mecca, like every good Muslim is supposed to do as long as they can afford it. They're supposed to make a pilgrimage to Mecca every year. Well, when he made his first pilgrimage to Mecca, he spent so much gold while passing through Egypt that he forced them into a type of inflation. So in other words, when the common Egyptian citizen would go to the marketplace and go to buy something, the merchant would ask, do you have any of the gold circulating? And if they didn't, they would have to pay up to double of the standard Egyptian currency. Now, what he did with all this wealth was even more impressive. He beefed up his military a little bit, but he actually put more of it into libraries, universities, and mosques, some of which still stand today. And in fact, some of these universities inadvertently helped spark the Renaissance in Europe. You see, Western Europe was like the Wild West without guns. Eastern Europe was doing well. It was under the Byzantine Empire, and they were doing well. The western portion, most of them were illiterate. After the fall of Rome, the Germanic barbarians came down and burned a lot of the books, libraries, everything. So a lot of knowledge was actually lost to medieval Europeans that ancient Europeans actually had. But a lot of this knowledge survived on in parts of the Middle East and down in Africa. So when some of the wealthy Western Europeans sent their kids to go to school down in Mali, they learned about their ancient ancestors in Greece and Rome, and they brought a lot of that knowledge with them back to Europe. That's hence the phrase, from here to Timbuktu. The capital was actually pronounced Timbuktu, and that's where most of them went to study, at the universities and the libraries, and that's where we get that phrase from today. So with these students going back to Western Europe with all this new knowledge that they acquired that had been lost to Western Europeans for about 1,000 years, with the upheaval already going on with the Reformation with Martin Luther and so on, it was already a revolutionary time for Europe. And that new thinking from the universities that they went and studied at helped spark the Renaissance today. That's another thing that not a lot of people know. I'd also like to mention the Kanembu Empire. From what I understand, they were religiously tolerant, they were very diplomatic, and they reigned for 1,000 years. And they're never really mentioned. When we talk about civilizations, empires, nations that lasted for 1,000 years, Rome's usually mentioned. And if you don't count the breakup of the dynasties in China or Egypt, they're mentioned, but no one ever mentions the Kanembu Empire. It was in Central Africa, it reigned for 1,000 years. And then there was the Zulu nation. The Zulu nation's military was reformed by Shaka Zulu. He broadened the shields, broadened the swords and created the buffalo horn formation. And with him and one of his generals, Ketchawayo, they were able to defeat colonial forces with firearms when all they had were their swords, shields, and spears. And that's something that should be noted as well. So if you like what you heard, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can ask me questions, engage with me. We'll be talking more about African history, all history, and anything that can spark your intellect, man. I want to wake people up, get them talking more. This is Nick's video, and this is your first episode of Skooled.